So hello and welcome you all to our second online ICMAB seminar. My name is Anna Mai, and I am the head of communication of the Institute of Material Science of Barcelona, the ICMAB. In today's seminar, we have Rafael Rodríguez Clemente, a former ICMAB researcher. We are very sorry because today his camera is not working properly, so we will not be able to see his face. I'm very sorry for that. But well, we can hear his voice and we can see his presentation. We also have as host Xavier Obrados, which is the current ICMAB director, and he will introduce you the speaker afterwards. Before starting, I only would like to remind you that if during the seminar or at the end of the seminar you have questions, you can do so by writing them. There is an icon in the bottom of your screen, probably with 3 dots. If you click there, you can see the questions and answers, and a panel opens in the right of your screen. So there you can write your questions, and then at the end of the seminar, either Xavier or myself will read them to the speaker. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say to you. Now I pass the virtual floor to Xavier, who will introduce the speaker, who will give us the seminar about European research activities. So Xavier, you can introduce.
Okay, so thank you very much, Anna, and good morning to everybody. And particularly thank you to Rafael Rodríguez, which is Rafa for everybody, actually. And we are really very happy to have again Rafa as a speaker in the Institute. So it's sure that when we scheduled this talk, we never expect that we'll do a webinar like this one, but we managed. And so hopefully we'll have the opportunity to see him again in the building of the ICMAB, not only in the spirit of the ICMAB. So thank you, Rafa, for coming. And let me just make a summary of the CV of the Rafa Rodríguez Clemente, because actually Rafa Rodríguez Clemente is one of the founders of the Institute. So he is a doctor in geology from the University of Barcelona, and he became part of the CSIC. And then he started the Institute and founding one of the laboratories at that time, which was named Crystal Growth Laboratory. So he introduced it in the spirit of the multidisciplinary participation of the Institute. We have people from geology, from chemistry, and from physics. And he was one of the best representatives of the field of the crystal growth, which actually now I would say that within the Institute, there are many followers of this activity, either in single crystals or nanoparticles or thin films and so on. And for sure, the contribution that he made at that time was really very useful. So, but in any case, today he will not be speaking about crystal growth, maybe another day. But today he will talk about what has been the second big activity of Rafa during his long scientific career, which is everything related to the European structure, the institutions, funding and functioning. And this is because actually Rafa Rodríguez already in 1997, he spent 5 years as the Spanish representative of the CSIC in Brussels. So this make him very aware of how the European institutions are working. And after these 5 years, he was back to Spain. He was during 4 years in Andalusia as an institutional representative of the CSIC in the Andalusia. So he continued in the frame of the collaboration with the CSIC and the European institutions. And at present, he is back in Barcelona, and he is inscribed in the Institute of Barcelona, IDAEA, from the CSIC. And so from them, he is continuing the activity of promoting the knowledge of the European Union institutions and how we can participate on them. And particularly in the last years, he has been very active in the scientific cooperation of the European Union with the Mediterranean partners countries. And so this means that he knows as well all the opportunities that the European Union provides to collaborate internationally with countries not belonging to the European Union. He has also been very active in the Framework Program 7 as a member of the region's knowledge and research potential. And so this means all the regional participation in the European programs. And he has been members of what is called the regional strategies of smart specialization in the case of Catalonia, which are also opportunities for the development of the regions with the fund from the European Union. And so I think this is enough for saying that he is a real expert of how the European Union is working. And so we'll be very happy to learn a bit about him, and don't hesitate to ask simple questions, because I'm sure that Rafa will be able to provide quite a unique view of this opportunity, which is the complex structure of the European Union and the Commission. So thank you, Rafa, and welcome to ICMAB. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Xavi. I am really very pleased to return, even virtually, to the Institute of Material Science, which is my home. It's my initial hometown. Okay, well, so thank you very much for inviting me to share some of my experience, some of my ideas about what's it, the European research activities. I have been engaged in this business for the last 20 years, so I can share with you some of my impression and some of my ideas. Well, first of all, I don't know who you are. I suppose that most of you are young scientists that are engaged in a prestigious institution like the ICMAB or even the IDAEA, my actual institution where I am, let's say ad honorem professor at this moment. So the common fact for all of you, perhaps, is that you are scientists who need money. And the people who need money sometimes consider relevant where the money comes from. I mean, the fact is to have the money just to provide support to your research. Okay, this is a general rule everywhere in the world. And sometimes the scientists are not aware of why they have access to certain money, why some institutions, some people gives money for research. And well, one of these institutions is the European Union. And I will try to share with you some of the ideas of why you can receive money from the European Union. Okay? And then, as many of the things of life, the things have always a personal root of somebody that was interested in that. And this somebody, that case, was a general director. I mean, we will see later what is the structure of the European Union. But first of all, I would like to pay homage to the person. This was Professor Paolo Fasella. He was General Director of Research. And when he was in the post in the year 1983, well, he pushed it and he obtained the creation of a European research program. Why? Well, because he was aware that, in fact, science is the activity of a network. And to meet people, to collaborate with people, to create network all along Europe was a must, was something necessary just to take profit of this interaction, because science comes out thanks to the interaction of people. So he was the university professor. The people there in Brussels, well, they say, well, when somebody is in a high position, he has some opportunities to obtain funding for a certain action of his interest. So Fasella at the time obtained the support of the European Commission, that at that time was much more interested in the common market, the steel and charcoal and all these programs. He obtained a little money just to support mobility, practically. So there was grants for mobility and so on. And so this is the initial idea. It started with supporting mobility of people inside Europe. I mean, create some little program of visiting. From this situation, initial situation in 1983, now in 2020, we are facing the third or maybe the second financial instrument of the European Union. So at this moment, this money that the European Union poured into research is one of the big issues. It's a very big issue. So before proceeding to explain you what I think about that, I have this presentation just because I don't know which is the level of your acquaintance with the European structure. So I will make a very brief introduction, but excuse me if it's a little long. So first of all, this is the structure of the European Union. We have the bosses. The bosses is the European Council, the summit. Here is the head of state, the case of France and the government. These are the bosses. These are the bosses. This is at the end, the people who reside, they represented the states. So the European Union is a sort of, loose union of states. And the head of the states has the last word. They also have the European Council, together with the European Parliament, they have the right to provide laws, provide directives, the laws of the European Union. This is a very important, and perhaps is the most important activity of the European Union, to make the acquis communautaire, the common laws that every country should adapt to their own legislation. It is compulsory to adapt the laws that the European Union produce to the national laws and the autonomous laws, etc., etc. Then we have the Council of Ministers, which is the representative of the European Council. Council of Ministers means that when they are talking about agriculture, are the Ministry of Agriculture, Industry, Ministries of Industry, Research, Ministries of Research. So the Council of Ministers is this part of the European Council that provides the advice, provides the position of the European Union. And we have here the European Commission. The European Commission is, let's say, is la gardien des traités. The policeman on the one side, but also the executive commission of the European Union. The European Commission has a very important right, which is the right of proposing initiatives, proposing laws, and then developing and implementing these laws with the means that they have. So besides that, you have here a number of other committees, another European Investment Bank, auditors, Committee of the Region, European Investment Bank, etc., etc. So this is all in all the European Union. So the European Union, you should never forget that it's a legal artifact. It's an artifact. It's something created not by war, like the states, they have a territory and so they conquer by war or something. No, it's a legal artifact. It's something that some countries have agreed to join and to make together things. But this thing, which is very unusual in the history of the human being, it's at the same time his major weakness, because imagine here, the European Council. The European Council at this moment are 27 heads of states and heads of government. To agree unanimously for certain activities, 27 persons representing their own interests is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult. This is why the European Union has always been accused of being, a too much bureaucratic instrument. It's very slow. The decision-making process is extremely low. And so this is one of the weaknesses, the thing that the people complain about the functioning of the European Union. Okay, so let's go to the matter that interests you, people, habit of money. This is the budget for the period. The European Union make the provision financière, the financial provision every 7 years, practically. So we are still in the period 2014, 2020, and then in billions, when there is a number of the money is assigned to certain topics. Here you have the biggest one. The biggest one is the sustainable growth, natural resources, in particular agriculture, rural development, etc., etc. This is extremely important. Most of the money goes there. And then we have the other most important is that economic, social, and territorial cohesion, which is research and innovation. This is our topic. Information and communication technologies, etc., etc., etc. Certain number. The competitiveness for growth and jobs is also another very important measure. Research and innovation is here, but it's also here. I mean, so we have the budget. It's look, the budget in last year was about 165 billion, which is enormous amount of money. Well, this enormous amount of money, in fact, represents only the 1% of the wealth, because every state has to put some money according to his gross domestic product. So it's very little money. But people think that in Brussels they have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of money. They have possibilities, particularly the highest strength of the European Union is the capacity to produce laws, regulations, standards, and so on. This is the point. Yeah? Well, let's go ahead. Un momento. Now, what happened? I tried to move here. This is how the European laws are made. Well, this is very interesting, and this perhaps was the thing that I best learned when I was in Brussels, is that every European initiative starts by, a green book, something like this, a white book, a green book, which is, there is somebody identify a problem. So the Commission start organizing group of expert discussion, open consult, etc., etc. At the time when all these ideas about the ideas about the given problem are formulated, well, this is the white book, and then comes to the green book, and so on. And finally, the Commission make a formal proposal. So make a proposal of directive, a proposal of law. This proposal goes to the Parliament and the Council of Ministers, because they decide jointly. And finally, when they approve it, there is also, sometimes they don't agree on the terms of a proposal, so they are discussing and they block it for a year or more, etc. Well, when finally they decided, then that passed to the national authorities, the national parliament, that have to implement locally these laws. I mean, they have to translate the European directives, the European laws, to the nation. And in case of conflict, certainly there is the Court of Justice. This is the implementation, and to see and to watch about what's happening. We are now having this problem with Poland, and particularly Poland, about they produce some laws that are against or are not fulfilling what the directive of an European directive. So in that case, the Court of Justice, and the Commission, they sent warning, they send some warning, and finally they can put an state in front of the Court of Justice because they are not complying with the European laws. So next, let me check if this, that goes so slowly. I don't know. Well, here. Well, this is a view that you said. This is the typical view of the Council of Ministers, which is when the member state, they have this is the place where they fight with each other just for the money, for the rules, for each state usually defends the interest of their own lobbies. Spain has always been fighting for having more money for agriculture and for the structural funds. Germany has fighting for the rules about the industrial production, the standards, etc. Every country has its own interest, and the Council of Ministers, this is the place where they try to arrive to agreements. This is very difficult. 27 people discussing is not simple. Okay, now let's be a little view of what is the frame, the frame that we had about the European research area. Well, every time Europe advances after a crisis, and this is true, it's always, first of all, we are in the edge of having a catastrophe, and then suddenly they reach an agreement, and so they have a step forward. Well, there was the observation in the European Commission that in fact the amount of money that they were putting into the system just to make this connectivity between the European researcher was in fact a small fraction of the total expenses that the European Union had, the European Union and its member states have. So they decided to agree on the Lisbon strategy, which was the the creation of the European research area was not just to have a program, a framework program, something like this. No, was trying to put the money, put the interest, and put the political will in connecting the research system of all the countries, made an area, an entire European area. And then they market some objectives. I mean, wishful thinking. That was in Barcelona. Barcelona is always a dreaming city. I mean, so it's good to market this limit, lower limit of the 3% of the gross domestic product as investment in public and private investment in research and development. This was the objective, because they had to say, well, we have to coordinate us, and we have to coordinate, and we have to make that not only the European money, but also the national money should connect with each other, and they had to make joint venture, just to improve, essentially, to improve the competitivity of the industry. We will go later on this point, but this was the idea. Well, Spain has never reached this level. Other countries have exceeded this level. So there is a real difference between countries about the intensity of research and development. In some countries, this is a driving force for development, and in others, well, it's not so important as our country. Besides that, and slowly, it becomes clear to everybody that research was a real asset for the countries to develop. And we have the example in some of the European countries like Finland, like Sweden, like even Germany, Holland, some other countries, that Israel is another good example of this, the knowledge societies. I mean, societies where the capital, the capacity to have an economic performance is due to the capacity to create new knowledge. So this idea that knowledge is a real asset is not only capital investment, it's not only labor forces, it's just to have talent and to be used to create new knowledge. This idea slowly has been appearing. And consequently, at the same time, the amount of money that was poured into the research activity was increasing. So we are witnessing in Europe that the amount of money dedicated to research is steadily increasing, while those dedicated to another cohesion policies or agriculture is decreasing. And now we are in the middle of the struggle. Okay, so when research started to be an important element of the productive system, we began to be taken seriously. And this is good for one side because the money increases, but it's not so good for the other side, because at this moment, the science, which is glass houses, I mean, everybody, when they made a research, when the people want to publish, want to notice to other people that they are having some interesting result, or they are creating a new theory about a given problem. Well, this transparency, typical of the research. Of the research society, the research group, this is not so clear for the business people. The business people have another mentality, and so they said, well, if I put money, I want to have something out of that and benefits for me. So this is, this evolution of the European research program progressively was introducing elements where the industrial people and even the societal people start to asking for research that were relevant for their own interest. So knowledge transfer was becoming very, very important. And of course, this is something that is not unknown for the people of research society, of the research community. Competitive funding is our day-to-day life. So this was not something unusual. But I remember that sometimes when I was living in Brussels, I had the visit of some politicians, Spanish politicians, and not only Spanish, from other countries. And they were asking me, well, how can I do to have the money from that? Because I need money for an idea. And I said, well, this usually in Brussels function for competitive calls. So you fade a proposal, you deposit a proposal, the proposal is evaluated, and then it's good enough, they will give you money. Otherwise, not. Well, they were shocked because this is not the way most of the political world function. I mean, if they want something and they have control of a budget, they have it, that's it. So this is not the rules of the game, and this also for some industrial, to have some money for develop a prototype or make something. Sometimes it's a question of making a proper lobby in front of the Ministry of Industry or the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Health and so on. So they can get the money. We are witnessing this these days here in Spain and all over Europe. Well, this is not the rules of the research area. And this, it's different language, these different, let's say, ethical positions in front of the budget. This is something that actually is a reality, and we are living with that. And we will see later on a little bit some of the facts. Okay, so this targeting of making a productive knowledge, slowly comes to two different fractions, two different fractions of the activities, or two different point of view. One is the point of view of the, let's say, researchers, the universities, research center, and so on, where the creation of knowledge and the interchange of knowledge is the basic. I mean, and the other is these people that they want to make economic progress out of the knowledge. And this is what is called innovation. I mean, the concept is a little bigger than this, but let's say that this innovation is when somebody make money out of an idea, out of a modification of something that is there in the market. So we are saying that at this moment, for the next framework program, we have had the European Research Council. I will come back to this. And now we have the Innovation Council. There is an Innovation Council, let's say, to cope with the consequence of this knowledge transfer. What does it mean, this knowledge transfer? Okay, so finally, the last framework program, the Horizon H 2020, that you know, organized itself in three pillars. The pillar were the excellence, industrial leadership, and let me the third one, and societal challenges, the societal challenge. So practically the money was divided into these three covers. Well, I'm almost finishing, but I would like to tell you that the challenge or the risk of moving forward with this public money to, let's say, an industrial benefits like this, implemented with all the issues related to intellectual properties and so on. It was a real challenge. So practically the system is moving to the new concept that, open science. I mean, open science, science has been always open. See, this is what surprised me, that the people in Brussels discovered that science is open, but they are now forcing, this is a policy, open knowledge, open market. And then when I was, I had several European projects, I have leader of some of them, and I remember that one of the things that we obtained was that with the money of a European project, we can publish. We should publish, and we can even pay for publishing, because now it's the site. So it is very clear, at least at some levels of the, let's say, the European policy of research and innovation, it is very clear that public knowledge, public science financed by the public money should be open, should be accessible to everybody. And this is, this is something that at this moment is affecting everything. It's open science, open innovation, open to the world. I mean, this is the attitude of Europe. This is something that marks a clear difference between the European research activity and the activity made in the United States or in China, Japan, and Korea. This is not, they don't have this clear policy, as clear as Europe at this moment. I think this is a very good policy because, if we don't share the knowledge, then we have some problem like the actual one that we know, coronavirus and so on. So this is the policy that at this moment is, having the lead in the European research activities. Certainly, there is the taking profit out of this research. And now this is, we have to have some driving forces. The last policy that really the European Commission put forward, and this I think it's very interesting and you must be aware of that, is the European Green Deal. Well, This was before the coronavirus comes, but this was a good idea. I mean, to apply all these new concepts that are coming out. Sorry, I mean, no, go back here. All these new concepts that the new concept is that, okay, science is a tool for the society. It's a tool for the society. So science should be here, should be mobilized in order to obtain a more sustainable future, because the actual future is not so clear, even if now we have blue sky thanks to the block of the economic activity and block on transport and so on. But nevertheless, this was not the panorama, say, a few months ago. So this is why the European Union also put forward the European Green Deal, which I think is extremely interesting, because there are some ambitions like the zero pollution, like restoring ecosystem and biodiversity from farm to fork. I mean, the new healthy and environmental food system, acceleration the shift to sustainable and smart mobility, etc., etc. So this was the idea, the policy behind the activities for the new programming of the European Union. Well, this is what the wishful thinking of the European Commission. Now we have the reality of coronavirus that has changed everything. But okay, well, this was the ambition claimed for this climate ambition for 2000 and 2030 and 2050. So the European Green Deal was the big policy, and okay, that's it. So that is my presentation. I think that is my presentation. I will stop here with this presentation, but then I want to comment you a few things about. So we have seen this evolution, the evolution of the, okay, let me close this thing. Well, I don't know. Oh, okay, well, so we have seen the evolution of science from the European point of view becomes, let's say, an activity of people from the university, research centers. They had to meet each other, you know, they chatting, etc. Okay, to the science as a driver, as a real driver, one of the main drivers for economic development. Not any kind of economic development, but a sustainable economic development. Well, this is very important. This is very important because at least at the European level, but also at the level of the states, at this moment, science is receiving an enormous amount of support. But at the same time, we are asked to provide solution to some of the problems that precisely the economic development that science, technology has facilitated is creating. So at this moment we have, and we saw that with the structure that we had in Europe and in Horizon 2020, we have the social challenges, we have economic development, and we have the other kind of supporting basic research. Well, now at this moment, at this very moment, the focus of the enormous economic effort of the European Union on research and development is in innovation. Innovation is the key word. Innovation and supporting innovative business and so on, so on. We have some risks about that, and this people is very conscious, is that in science, we need mavericks. I mean, we need people that don't follow the crowd. I mean, they are their own way. You know, maverick is a term that I learned in the United States. This is the little bull that doesn't go with the rest of the bull. It goes his ways. In science, this is extremely important, and this is why, at the end, the European Commission decided to create the European Research Council. The European Research Council is just an instrument, a financial instrument, to support basic research, new ideas, disruptive ideas. This idea, certainly this instrument, together with the Erasmus, together with the support to the research infrastructure, is a sort of compromise of the European to support its strong, at this moment, network of European researchers cooperating with each other. You know, sharing a common knowledge reservoir. That is extremely important for us. We hope that this tendency of preserving, you know, the niche for the pure science, for the support to the knowledge will continue. I am a little afraid about the fact that innovation is taking the lead. Innovation basically is when a business make more money thanks to have new ideas, new product, new concept, etc., etc. But if you made that the university and the research centers function exclusively through innovation, this will not be good for us. It's not very good. But we have to make a compromise as always. We have to cooperate with the business, and we have to cooperate naturally with the social structure that has series of demands about problems. Well, coronavirus has changed all this, and now the focus of the social priorities has come back to the social issues as a priority. I am following all the evolution about the reaction of the different countries about the coronavirus. This challenge is the most important challenge that I have witnessed in my life, and I am 72, so it's a long time. Eh? So now I think the people start realizing, and this has been said by many other people, that if you don't have a knowledge support, if you don't have a big research infrastructure, a big innovation infrastructure, a great public service regarding research, education, innovation, health. If you don't have this thing, you're lost. You're lost, because when a virus like this comes, we are unprepared. We have had this toll of dead people in Spain, in Italy, in UK, in the United States now, which is a catastrophe. This is a real catastrophe. And the real catastrophe is because, the scientific advice to the governance has not been taken into account accurately. Because they signed that the things was going wrong. We had this indicator from December. But well, the system in most of the countries, at least in our sphere, in Europe and in America and so on, they had no function. It functioned much better in Korea or in Singapore and so on than in Europe. In Europe, we were thinking, well, this is something in China, and we don't realize that now the world is just a single entity. It's all connected. Okay, so now let's go to some of the problems, and I will try to start stopping. Well, I have mentioned to you a few things that have appeared these days. The people is blaming, the states is blaming the European Commission, is blaming everybody blames everybody else about the lack of reaction to the coronavirus. Well, this is a fact. The fact is that the time to take decision at the European level is extremely low. Why? Because I mentioned to you, you had 27 persons that has to agree on the things and have a long process before taking a decision. We have to improve our reaction mechanism, because even in research, I remember and then Xavier Obrador and the people in ICMAB know well, when the superconductors appeared, I remember, well, there was a rush to go to superconductor. Or when we had some of another emergency, sanitary emergencies in Europe, the capacity of the European framework program to react was very slow. I mean, they had to modify on the spot just to provide some funding to support activities. So we have to be conscious that we have to be reactive. We have to be able just to overpass this the mark of the competence of the European Union and provide that the European institutions should be more swift in reaction in front of a challenge, in front of one of these risks that appear. Because the risk, the catastrophe, climatic catastrophe, we have witnessed a few, health catastrophe, food catastrophe, they are coming. They are coming more frequently than never before. So we have to be ready. We have to be prepared for that. So that. Second, another argument that I would like to put you is, well, we have the possibility to interact. We have the possibility with the fact that we are witnessing, the fact that coronavirus is creating, the new panorama that is creating. We have to react. We have to use the prestige of the scientific community to press the parliaments, to press the government, and so on. I mean, we are, well, I always say that we scientists, we are stupid people. We have some power that we never use it. We only we push to have some money to finance a new infrastructure and so on. We know we have to be in the common day policy, because it affects us, not only as citizens, but also as people that can provide resources. In this crisis, I have also seen that there was an offer of the scientific institution to provide some analytical tools. Well, the procedure was complicated, extremely complicated, because we don't have a presence, a permanent presence and a permanent authority just advising the government to do this thing. I mean, this is not, unfortunately, in Spain, this is very badly organized. But even in Britain, remember what happened with the first advice that they received just to leave the coronavirus to propagate, and then got collective immunity, which was a disaster, was crazy. But well, some people think that it was the easiest way. So we have, I mean, we have to engage in this social debate. We have to engage in that. Another thing is that, well, I saw that recently about this problem, this kind of problem, should be organized with one of the instruments that is going to be used in the Horizon Europe, the next framework program, as the missions. So I simply raise your concern about the concept of mission, which is, well, it's an evolution of the technological platform, of different platform, or, you know, the cluster and whatever. I mean, the fact is that we have to associate to the productive system, to the administration, to the NGO, etc., etc. We have to associate to be a partner in the description of the social challenges, and to be there. We have to be there. If we are not there, it takes a long time until somebody say, well, maybe these people the people of research, they are aware of that, and they could advise, they could give a tip, something like this. Well, that is the situation. I will have to stop, because if not, I will continue very long. Another thing that it is important for the scientific community is that we have to be aware that in the language that the people of the European Commission and the policy people use, there are two concepts: it's objective and impact. So we have to be familiar with this concept. We have to be aware that we have to provide indicators of the impact of what we do, the impact of our activity. We have to pass this message to the society, and this, I think, Anna May and his colleagues, they try to do their best. Some of us also, we try to do our best to pass the message, because we have social prestige, but we don't use it. Unfortunately, we don't know how to use it, and we have to use it. Okay, we are having very difficult times now, and I think that with the coronavirus issue, this is a disaster, it's a real catastrophe, and I hope that the people will be aware that without a sounded knowledge base in a society, at this moment we are at risk. And then I stop here.
Okay, thank you, Rafa, for this interesting seminar to know who is who in the European Commission. I don't know. I see that there are no questions in the questions and answers. Maybe Xavier, you have a question for Rafa?
Sure. Thank you very much, Rafa, for this presentation. I think that as you have mentioned, the focus of the talk has a little bit changed by the COVID situation. Probably you didn't schedule at the beginning to raise the fact that the view of the science in Europe could change with this new situation of the COVID, and I'm sure that this will take a full new seminar to talk about how the future can change. But let me put at the present a few comments or questions in order to enter at least in debate of the European Union. So one of the things that you have raised is that the European Union, as you said, is the biggest organization in Europe, terms of promoting cooperation and so on, but of course the flexibility and the way that it proceeds is becoming, or it has always been, very difficult to compete in a global world. And probably you don't know, but among the people who is listening to you, there are a lot of people from China, for instance, which are working here at ICMAB. And I would say that since the European Union was created, it's clear that there has been a big change in the worldwide situation. And one is, of course, that Asia, and particularly China, but also the other countries, has made a big and huge effort and a huge progress in research. And so my question is, can you comment a little bit more about what is your vision about how Europe can really compete in a global world with the situation that the dynamism of other parts of the world is much bigger than the European Union? So you have mentioned the case of the COVID, where it's clear that the decisions on how to redirect funds and so on should be done very fast. Here in Europe, you didn't mention, but we had the case of the president of the ERC, who actually demissioned, partly because he was proposing to have a faster reaction of the European Union in this field, and the rules of the European Union didn't allow him to introduce focus or a directed research in this field, and that's why he decided to leave the ERC. And can you mention a little bit what is your vision about the possibility that the European Union can really react fast enough to compete in the global world?
Okay, there are two things that you mentioned. I will reply to the first one. I mean, certainly, I mean, the scientists compete and cooperate. I mean, the second word is we cooperate. We cooperate with those with whom we compete. So I think that regarding the emergence, which is extraordinary, fruitful, and it's a very good example how China made a great leap, you know, in a very short time. That's indicated that this is a very talented people, and this is, in fact, is a very good thing that China has the enormous level of development in scientific development that they have nowadays. So I think that Europe compete with China, or compete with the United States, compete with everybody in the development of ideas, in the development of new technologies, but at the same time it cooperates. I mean, we can never split cooperation and competition. We compete if we are aware of where are our interests, and we compete and we cooperate if we know where are our interests, and we defend it at the same time. This is what everybody do, and we have to learn to do the same. Well, that can represent a certain break, a certain obstacle to the transparency in the scientific cooperation, and this is an issue that is at this moment you manage how you can. But I think that with this concept of missions, or the concept of the platform, where everybody has to put something in and to take something out of this, maybe we can coordinate and we can make compatible to cooperate and to compete. I think the question is to have clear idea what are your interests. This is my view. For the second question that you mentioned about the European Research Council, well, this is an interesting issue. I think that this, I have followed this problem because it was very interesting for the whole scientific community. So my view is that I think the former president, the one who resigned, had not a clear idea of what was the mission and what was the frame of activities of the European Research Council, because the European Research Council was aimed at supporting frontier knowledge and supporting, spontaneous proposal about everything. It is not a fund that you can take the money and then you finance immediately what you can do. You consider that it's interesting. This is not the rules. And you know that in the European Union, the people is very careful about how you handle the money. You cannot use the money as your wish. You can't. There is a process, a selection process, a transparent process that you must respect. in all cases. And this is like this, you cannot make. There is other instrument of the European Union, other instrument where you can pour money to a certain action. And we have witnesses in the coronavirus issue. I mean, there has been a lot of money expended in providing some support for that. And we have also witnessing through the press that some businesses has been done out of this, uncontrolled money. So we have to be very careful with the public money and so on. So one thing is that all the European projects have rules. Another thing that maybe join your argument and your position is that maybe we can have a smoother thing. I mean, we have made shortage of time. I mean, I remember that I had projects in the 4th framework program where when you deposit a proposal, you obtain the money after 2 years, like this. It was a nightmare. At this moment, it is more swift. But in my opinion, and then I joined you, I think that the European Union must have a sort of emergency funding that existed formally, but not for the research. It emerged when we have a catastrophe, environmental something catastrophe. There are some funding to support immediate action through the mechanism of the European Union. This doesn't exist yet at the research level. And maybe we can apply, or we can say that some of the risks that are not foreseen but appear suddenly should have a quick reply. We have that with the mad cows crisis. I remember with the mad cow crisis, it was a disaster also. Well, the mad cows need a lot of time, just that finally some European funding goes there. Right? This is some lesson that, in my opinion, we are going to have more and more of this catastrophe, more and more at different levels, in the food level, and the health level, environmental level, technological risk, and even in the information society. I am a good example. I cannot have my camera with you. I am blind. You're blind. I am blind. Respect to you. So we have technological risk. Also, we have to cope with all this risk in a swifter way. I mean, we cannot wait for all the process.
So in some way, you mentioned that the mechanisms to have quick replies to emergencies like this one is something that maybe is still missing in the European Union. And it's clear that we have, let's say, short-term and long-term activities. So that's maybe my next question will be to discuss a little bit more what you mentioned.
Yes, I think so.
Generation and innovation. So it's clear this is the two axes of the European Union since the creation. And I would say that I have already seen several framework programs, and I have seen how we are going from the left to the right on these two things, and suddenly we need to generate more knowledge, and we realize that actually we are very bad in innovation and technology transfer, and so we have the impression that we need to find something like a good balance on having the possibility to have long-term knowledge and disruptive generation of knowledge, as you mentioned. But also, it's clear that innovation or the industrial situation in Europe needs to be optimized. And here again, I would say that I have the impression that the COVID situation and the industrial involvement on this crisis is also another point that maybe will raise additional discussion about how independent should be strategically Europe in terms of innovation and industrial capabilities, because maybe we have been going too far in the globalization issue that, let's say, cost and that it is what decides everything. It's clear that as a Spanish partner in Europe, we are still not happy about the situation of the innovation within Europe. You know very well that it's not easy that academic world and industrial world within Europe have a real, true collaboration. It's not so often that you have a country like Germany with 3% of the GDP devoted to research and development, and other countries like our country, which is only 1.2. We need to really improve this situation, because otherwise an industrial company in Germany will be very rarely really have a strong cooperation with the academic partner in another country. And so it's clear that, in my opinion, that innovation should be improved and should be go beyond. But the impression that we have had in many fields in, let's say, the research within Europe is that very often we do a lot of knowledge generation, but then the industrial people prefer to have manufacturing industries in China and Korea and Singapore and so on, but not in Europe. So we have the 2 points that need to have a good balance, and it's not very clear that this is really advancing a lot at present.
Well,
the importance of the Green Deal that you mentioned, I am very happy that you mentioned this, because it's really gives good hope that Europe is leading a vision of how should be the economy led in the next years.
Okay, I will comment on what you said. Is that I remember that with this crisis, one thing has been very clear, is the scientific community is global and is function according to global view. I remember I received a couple of papers produced by people in Wuhan, China, about the evolution and the indicator and the symptom of the coronavirus and what was with the couple action of this virus together with other sickness. This was Chinese doctors that made this thing, and this came immediately to all over the world. So while the scientific community is absolutely connected and function in front of a risk like this, in front of a challenge, in a connected way, the innovation is not so, because the logic behind innovation is the market, is competence, it's competition, it's just sharing of the market, is money at the end. And how to cope with that? Yes, this is not an easy issue. I don't know if there is the logic behind the connectivity of the research community is very clear. It's curiosity, it's sharing the knowledge, and it's exchanging experience and advancing all together. This is not the case in the logic in the, let's say, innovation community. But we know that somehow we have to cooperate. We have to push together to find a new logic, maybe to find a new logic when we have a global risk, apply criteria different than markets where we have such risk, how to do it in a capitalist society. It's risky, but we have to find a way to stimulate competition, which this is very good for creating goods, but at the same time cooperate when we have a challenge as risky as this one. I mean, this is a big issue, how to couple the two things. The scientific community has been completely open, and I tell you, I repeat, this was a scientific article from China that gave me the fair insight on what was wrong with the coronavirus. And now we are seeing that thing. But what you mentioned is true. I mean, maybe we have to apply another logic to the innovation beside the competition and the improving of competitiveness. Yeah? That would be another logic.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of questions that I would like to summarize. So one is to say something like Europeans sees or consider science as a tool for society. Isn't this a bit a dangerous road to take? It sounds it has the potential to limit the scope of science.
Well, I have mentioned this risk already. Put the science at the service of some other interest. Put the science at the service of, economic competitivity. If we do that, the risk is certainly is the science become opaque. It's not transparent. Will be at the service of some particular interest. And at least I have there is something unanimous in the scientific community that science must be open and at the service of the society as a whole, not at the particular interest. I think this is a principle that we cannot remove, because otherwise we are killed. I mean, we are killed. This is not science anymore if we are not transparent and we don't communicate with each other in an open way.
Okay, thank you. Then another one is a question that you have already mentioned a little bit, is about why the Mauro Ferrari, the president of the ERC, resignated 2 weeks ago. And so maybe you should mention a little bit more about the different philosophy of ERC and the rest of the organizations within the European Union concerning open views or focused science, say.
Okay, regarding the dismission of the former president of the European Research Council, I have to tell you that I read his letter of resigning, and I read the reply of the Council of the European Research. I read the two documents, and from there, well, it seems that on the one side, he asked for applying the resources of the European Research Council to the challenge of the coronavirus, which is logic. But the reply, they said that, in fact, there was other instruments that at this moment that had been mobilized already by the European Commission to support these sort of things. There were other instruments already there. So the money was there. And I think that at this moment, there are absolutely no lack of funding for the groups that are making research about the coronavirus. Here in CSIC, we have some examples. These people of the in Juanes, you know, the people of the biotechnology center in Madrid, they have received a lot of money to develop a vaccine and to develop, you know, another product just to cope with the problem created, medicine and vaccine. So there is absolutely no lack of funding to support these sort of things. On the one side, there is that. And the second point that caught my attention was that the people of the council, they blame this former president because there, he was maybe not fully aware of what was the mission of the European Research Council, and he was more interested in his private business in the United States than in staying there and being there. So there was the two positions compelling in this issue. I have a tendency to think that it's one of the strengths and the weakness of the European Commission is that when you have a funding, this funding is for some purpose, and this is committed. You have to, when you have a challenge like this, and this is what with Xavier we mentioned before, we don't have an instrument to immediately react. There is not this instrument. They created on the spot and so on, and so finally they try to do that. States are more swift just to do these things, but not the European Commission, because the European Commission then have to reply to the accounting, the parliament, everything. Then there is all a fuss around the misuse of funding. I mean, this is basically the terror of the function of the people working in the European Commission. That somebody say, well, you are misusing the funding. You are using this fund for something that was not scheduled to. So this is the procedure, you know, the nightmare of the functionary. This is something that we all have witnesses.
Okay, we understood the situation then. I think I would ask you that you mentioned something that maybe didn't appear too much, is the relevance that the European funding in the case of Spain, let's say. So, as you said, the Lisbon strategy, the European research area tried to define already several years ago that all the countries within Europe should invest at least 3% of the people on the GDP, in the research and development. And actually, since the last crisis in 2016, Spain has decreased what was a growing situation, and I think we reached about 1.8 only, and now we have decreased again in 1.2. While in the same time, for instance, Germany has increased more than 0.5% of the research and development. So it's clear that Spain has a problem. No? What do you think about that?
Well, what I think is that in the crisis of 2008, we have a minister, which was a person coming from a bank. And in fact, his first priority was to save the bank. Save the bank at the expenses of everything else. The health, the reduction of investment in health, now we are paying the price. the reduction of investment in research and education and so on. The bank was saved, yes. Now he has been rewarded by a post of vice president of the European Central Bank. This was the situation that, unfortunately, I mean, the lesson is very clear. Research has not perceived by the Spanish political elite as a priority. They had never perceived this as a priority. So they can sacrifice without blaming anybody about that. And now this is the situation where we are. And now when we need to support innovation, when we need to create these bridges with the industry to use the intellectual capital to create new jobs, to create new industries and so on, well, there is no instrument because the elite, the political elite of our country is worried about other things, like preserving the bank, for instance. I would like to go to other things. So this is the result of a historical process. And I hope that with all the changes and all of the challenges that we are facing at this moment, somebody, the political parties or at the parliament, realize that if we don't have a strong knowledge system, we are done. We are done. We will be a country of tourism, waiter, and good cookers, maybe. Yeah. But not of a powerful and competitive industry in the global market.
Okay, so I think you have been clear enough then.
Yes, I think so.
I don't have more questions. I don't know if you, Anna, want to do something else. I don't see any additional questions. We have really make a good exercise looking at the European Union. I think in the last comments you have made, it has also become clear that the European Union contribution in the case of very important in order to make the good groups in Spain to survive with years where the banks were the priority in the country. I would really stress that in the case of the ICMAB, the percentage of the funding that we receive from Europe has been really crucial in order to survive as a competitive center in Europe. Otherwise, during these years, would have been very, very difficult. And still, I would say that maybe, only maybe, the situation of the COVID can help to make the society understanding that actually science is not an expensive activity, the opportunity to really survive in the present world. And so the role of science as an advisory in order to take the right decisions in politics, in health, and in the other crises that you mentioned, they are involved within this view of the European Union, should really stress more and more. Otherwise, I don't see that our country will have an opportunity to keep going within this global world. So thank you very much, Rafa, for all the comments. And then to add something else.
Well,
I wanted to add just that now we have here Carlos Miravillas. Hello, Carlos. So you actually are the one who invited Rafael. So I don't know if you have any comment.
Hello, no. I had very strong difficulties for connection. You know, and no comments.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. And I also see, Xavier, in the chat that there is another comment, in fact. It says, many thanks, Rafa. Totally agree with your viewpoints. It has already been difficult to succeed in projects. Will now be more difficult due to the change in priorities.
Well, I have seen this comment from Silvia. And, well, I think that precisely because we have several instruments at European level to finance basic research, the important point is just to present our interest as a real common challenge in Europe, because this is something very important to understand, that European funding is to cope with European problems. So we have to know how to present the problem with an European view for the benefits of the European people, the whole European people, or the whole humanity. Sometimes it's better a global challenge also. So I think will not be a problem of changes in priorities, because the priorities are practically always the same. Now there are some new priorities, and the new one that will come up with the coronavirus and others. I think the total landscape, in my opinion, this is a feeling that I have, this year will change. Along this year, there will be a rearrangement of all these priorities and the decision-taking process also, because with Xavier we have talked about this slowness. This is very slow, the processes, and the priorities can change from one day to another. This is the lesson of coronavirus. Can change from one day to another. We don't have the capacity to react. We have the talent. I mean, we have the human capacities to react, but not the frame condition to react. That's the problem. And we have to cope with this. So, well, thank you very much for your invitation, Xavier. I hope that this invitation one day, when we will come, will be doubled by a real invitation to a good restaurant, because this is at least what I expect from your side. Okay. Not now, not today, and not these days. Okay, I will, one of these days when we will be free from the confinement, I will go to Bellaterra, and you will have time to enjoy the pleasures of Bellaterra.
Okay, sure. So the restaurant list is for you. Is waiting for you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you also, Joan, who also has helped us with the IT problems. And thank you to all the attendees who joined us today. There were nearly 50 participants in the beginning of the seminar, so we are very happy for your attention and for being here. And as Rafa says, I think that not only the European Commission will change priorities with the coronavirus, but all of us will change priorities, maybe in the way of life and the way we do things. So let's see how we continue after this confinement.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.